What's the worst possible start to a season that you could imagine? Right? The worst possible start. Obviously, would be starting a season and then, maybe losing every single game. And we've found clubs that have done that before. But I'm going to make an argument that there's something about this particular situation that makes it worse. Right? Because there is something about this particular situation that makes it worse. I'm going to warn you, though, this is going to be a conversation that involves MLS. The other, right? I might even use the word soccer. But this is a story that's come out of MLS, and I think it is representative, actually, of a big problem that MLS has. Because this entire story revolves around the Los Angeles Galaxy, right? One of the, if not the biggest brand in MLS. They won the MLS championship last year. They won 2-1 in the final against New York Red Bulls. They won MLS Cup. They brought it home. And now, none of that matters. Now, there was some noise about this before the season. And this is a well-known issue with MLS in general. And I don't mean to say the trophy doesn't matter, but I just mean to say it's having zero impact on the way they're playing right now. You're actually not going to believe how bad this gets. But before the season, Marco Reus, who obviously plays for LAFC and finally won a league title for the first time in his career LA Galaxy, that's a horrible mistake to make, plays for LA Galaxy. He said kind of before the season, right, that he was frustrated, that he was upset. I'm going to see if I can find like a quote that would, instead of trying to paraphrase. The rules, while legitimate for league business, can sometimes feel like obstacles that hinder the process of signing players, requiring teams to meet a blood price to get a deal done. That's obviously the AI overview, so take that with a grain of salt, but here is the actual interview. When you're a champion, the next year you have a smaller budget in the league. That means you can't buy good players anymore, even if you lose 2 or 3 good players. I don't understand the rules, honestly. It is how it is. I think it will be a long fucking season. I can say that here. February until October, and then the playoffs. We are champions, but nobody cares. Looks around as people walk by him. Are we going to defend the title? I hope so. It will be difficult. We lost too many good players. So our general manager has to buy some big players. I don't want to be last this season. Right? So he expressed very openly. I mean, this is before the season starts. Right? This is February 10th. That's before the MLS season. He expresses very openly a couple of different things here. He expresses how he doesn't understand the league rules, which is everyone. I feel like people that work for MLS clubs don't understand the league rules. I know for a fact MLS players that I have talked to do not understand everything about the league rules. They understand certain parts of it that have, been explained to them by various members of the front office. But they don't actually understand all of the rules. And one of the other directions he goes is we're the champions, but nobody cares here. And I think instead of just saying nobody cares in LA in general, it's this idea that the team won the championship, and it's almost like referring to the team staff, right? Because there's this feeling in MLS, nobody ever repeats. It doesn't happen in MLS because you win the championship, and then the budget constraints and all the rules are all still there, and your team basically falls apart, right? NYCFC, I remember they won it in 2021, and I was interviewing fans of NYCFC for a documentary, and all they're talking about is, yeah, I mean, we knew we were going to be bad the next year. Like there wasn't really much of a choice. You win MLS Cup, and that's the price you pay. You're going to be bad for the next year, probably for the next few years, because you're going to basically have to build the team back up again. So in the sense that nobody cares, it's almost like you won the title, but there isn't even a real effort to try and defend it. And there isn't that kind of energy around the team that we are the reigning champions that you would have at, let's say, a Liverpool. Now, obviously, there's a difference in the size of a fan base between Liverpool and LA Galaxy. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, if you win the league, there's a real buzz and energy to try and go win it again. And I think what Marco Reus is talking about here is that is not a thing, right? That there just isn't that energy and that buzz and that. And I mean, he'd never won a league title before, so maybe that it's a little extra energy and buzz for him. And he's almost saddened by the fact that there isn't a let's rip after this and go for it again. And wow, league titles, life-changing. LA Galaxy's won MLS Cup a bunch of times. I think they've got more than anybody else. So really, this wasn't a spectacular or over-the-top for a lot of people around LA Galaxy as it probably was for Marco Reus. So there's a lot of different layers to this particular quote, but it is incredibly clairvoyant how right he was at the start of the season. Okay, because at the drop of the season, right, it's LA Galaxy against San Diego. They lose 2-0 at home. Then they lose 2-1 at Vancouver. Turns out Vancouver's the best team in the Western Conference, so no skin off your back there. They get bumped, or no, they survive Herediano in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, but I'm pretty sure they lose in the next round to Tigres. There it is. And in the meantime, they draw at Portland Timbers, draw at Minnesota United. So now you're looking at 5 matches played with just 2 points. Then they lose at home against Orlando City. You had to come across the country for the pleasure. They lose against Real Salt Lake. And I think you can finally really tell where this is going. But it just keeps getting worse. They lose, or they draw 1-1 against Houston Dynamo. That's their last point they picked up this entire season. They lose against Austin. They lose at home against Portland. They lose to Sporting Kansas City. And you might remember this. I made a video about it. In a match where Sporting Kansas City registered 0 XG. They didn't attempt a shot, let alone a shot on goal. They got an early own goal and held on for the win. They lose 7-0 to New York Red Bulls on the road. On my, in my hood. They lose 7-0 to the team that they beat in MLS Cup final last year. And then they continue that road trip and they go to Philly Union and they lose 3-2. What you are looking at now is a system in the MLS that is so clearly broken that this is the flashing red light to demand that it be fixed. Because this is not an unusual, this is an unusually bad start, but this is not an unusual occurrence. And what you now have is the reigning champions of the league sitting at the worst start in league history. It's actually the worst start in the history of the league. They have played 13 matches. They have 3 points. There's no relegation in MLS. If there were, they would already be on the fast track. No other team has less than 11 points in the Western Conference. They are so far and away the worst team in the West. It's not even, there is no debate. They have conceded 31 goals in 13 matches. Now, they've had some injury issues. Reus hasn't been available. Ricky Puig, who's arguably the best player in MLS, outside of, the messy goat, him being, a farm animal. Ricky Puig is coming back from a torn ACL. He's still not back yet. Honestly, at this point, just let him recover the rest of the year. I mean, what's the point? You're already 50. I mean, you're freaking 13 points out of a playoff spot after 13 matches. I mean, that's some witchcraft and wizardry right there. This is Hogwarts level awfulness. It is earth-shatteringly bad. If you look at the Eastern Conference, the worst team's on 7 points. Montreal, they've only won 1 game in 13 matches. They have freaking 7 points. They've only conceded 17 goals all season, and their issue is they can't score, while LA Galaxy's issue is obviously that they have the second fewest goals scored as well in the Western Conference, while conceding at least 7 more goals than any other team in the first 13 matches of the season. I mean, a minus 21 goal difference is appalling. But I think you can see the issue here. You should not be punished this severely for winning the league. And I think, if I may, tangent here, this is terrible for football in the United States. Because even in the other sports, NBA, NFL, NHL, where there are salary caps, right, where there are ebbs and flows of teams dictated by things like the draft and salary caps and how contracts progress, right? In an NFL, once you have to start paying a couple of players big, you got to get rid of some other players. Same in the NHL, same in the NBA. You can't keep the great teams together, but there still can be great teams over multiple seasons. In MLS, there can't. There can be teams that are good over multiple seasons, but there can be there's no Kansas City Chiefs. There's no Golden State Warriors. There's no Man City or PSG or Bayern Munich or Real Madrid or Barcelona. Even Inter or Juventus over the last 10, 15 years. You can't create that. And I'm not saying it's a good thing to have a PSG or a good thing to have a Bayern that wins the league every single year. And as long as you have some sort of salary cap structure in place, there isn't going to be a team that's able to do that. because there are ebbs and flows. But I think if you look at the other major sports in the United States, you can still have teams that, they had an era, 6, 7 years where that team was great. And this is what they did. But in MLS, it's not possible. And if MLS has one thing going for it, it's very successful where it is. In the cities in which it exists, it gets a really good following. The problem is it's a local league, right? It's a local league because if you aren't in Portland, if you aren't in San Jose, if you aren't in Orlando or Nashville, there's no reason to pay attention to it. And one of the biggest contributing factors, and it's like the opposite of what NBA does really well, and it's certainly the opposite of what global football does really well, where you'll have the same guys on Real Madrid for 10 years. You know what you're dealing with. Is the teams here, they turn over too fast. There is no villain. There's no player you root for. There's no player you root against. That doesn't exist. There's just this constant churn of militant parity. I mean, militant, I think, being the right word here. And there is no better example of militant, like weaponized parity than the team that won the title just rocking out at the worst ever start in MLS the next year. With no end in sight, by the way. It's not like it's going to get any easier. They basically played everybody in the Western Conference once already. Or they're more than half the way through, right? It's not like there are a lot of teams out there that they haven't played yet. They've played Houston. They've played Real Salt Lake. They played St. Louis. They played Sporting Kansas City. Who are you going to beat? Who are you going to call? Not the Ghostbusters and not LA Galaxy to try and win a freaking match. And it's not, I mean, again, I'm not blaming them here, although they have played terribly. And obviously they've done particularly poorly. But there is a system in place in MLS that I think robs people of the ability to build a sustained good team. And what's the point of sports if you can't hope to build a sustained good team that turns every team and every fan group into like a championship club hoping to pull off a magic run in the FA Cup to win it, but you got a 1 in 30 chance. And then if you do, you're right back where you started again. You should be hoping for a golden age like Nottingham Forest in 1980s or now, right? Or Manchester City fans that had the, obviously struck, oil gold, but had to live through watching Manchester United be the greatest team ever. And then all of a sudden their golden age came. Or Tottenham at some point in the future. I mean, that's the hope. I think MLS, if this isn't a big shining red light that they need to at least change some of the rules to allow teams to sustain success more, I don't know what is. I don't think there could be a bigger shining red light than your reigning league champion and one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest, most valuable club at MLS, being dog shit.